Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, I want to share a set of chilling stories about the unexpected dangers that can come from something as simple as a yard sale. Buckle up and prepare for a journey through yard sale finds that quickly turn dark. You might just reconsider your next impulse buy. Story 1. The Mysterious Old Toolbox. My name is Alex, and I'm 31 years old, working as an insurance agent. After dealing with phone calls and claims all week, I like to spend my Saturdays driving around looking for yard sales. I enjoy the thrill of digging through unwanted items, hoping to find something with a little history, something I can reuse or fix. A few weeks ago, I was cruising through a neighborhood when I spotted a sign for a yard sale. It was small, with just a folding table on the driveway. Most of the items were kitchen gadgets and books, but there was also a stack of tools. One piece immediately stood out, an old, rusty, red metal toolbox. It reminded me of the one my grandfather kept in his garage. And a wave of nostalgia hit me the moment I saw it. I opened the lid to see a few wrenches, screwdrivers, and a beat-up wooden hammer inside. Nothing too fancy, but it felt like a piece of the past. "How much for this?" I asked the older man who was running the sale. He shrugged casually. $10. Deal. I handed over the money. He and I chatted briefly about how they don't make tools like they used to. Then I drove home, feeling satisfied with my find. About a week went by, and I almost forgot about the toolbox. It sat in my garage, waiting for me to clean it up. Then one evening, my doorbell rang. Standing at the door was a man I didn't know, somewhere in his late 40s. Thin and tense, with short brown hair and a troubled look. He said, "You bought a toolbox at a yard sale last week, right?" I was surprised and asked. "Yes, I did. Why?" "It's mine. It got sold by mistake, and I need it back." He leaned closer, making me feel uneasy. Politely, I explained that I bought it fair and square and that if there was a mistake, he should talk to the original owner. He just stared at me with cold eyes, then backed away and said, "I'll be back." True to his word, he returned 2 days later. I saw him through my peephole, pounding on the door harder than before. "Hey," he shouted, "I know you're in there. Just give me the toolbox." I kept quiet. Something about him felt unsafe. Eventually, he left, but not before pacing on my porch like a trapped animal. Over the next week, the man returned several times, often at odd hours, early morning or late at night, banging on my door, demanding the toolbox. One afternoon, I heard the doorknob rattle. My stomach dropped when I realized I had forgotten to lock it. I quickly slid the bolt in place, then called a friend to vent. My friend said, "This guy sounds dangerous. You need to call the police." At first, I hesitated. He hadn't physically harmed me or broken in. Still, it was getting out of hand. Late one night, around 10 p.m., he tried to force his way into my home. That was the final straw. I called 911. "There's a man at my door trying to break in," I told the operator, my hand shaking around the phone. I also grabbed a kitchen knife for protection. Through the door, I yelled, "I'm calling the police. Leave now." He must have heard the panic in my voice. He cursed under his breath, then ran off. When the police arrived, they took my statement and assured me they'd file a report. "Call us if he comes back," they said. That night, as my adrenaline wore off, I found myself staring at the old toolbox in the garage. Why was it so important to him? Curiosity took over. So I opened the box and carefully inspected each tool. Eventually, I noticed something strange. The metal bottom of the toolbox was thicker in one spot. I pried at it with a screwdriver and discovered a hidden compartment underneath. Inside were several plastic bags filled with white powder. My heart pounded. Drugs. That's what he was after. Shaking, I realized how serious this was. The next morning, I brought the toolbox straight to the police station. They didn't seem shocked. In fact, an officer nodded grimly and said, "You did the right thing. but be cautious for a while. We don't know what this guy might do next." On my way home, I felt both relieved and terrified. I worried he might still come after me, not knowing the police now had his stash. That evening, as I pulled into my driveway, I noticed the front porch light was off. I always leave it on. My nerves spiked. Stepping out of my car, I saw my front door wide open, its lock shattered. Fear surged inside me, but I had to see what was going on. I dialed 911 again, keeping the line open as I walked through the wreckage. The living room looked like a hurricane had hit it. Couch cushions were tossed around, and books littered the floor. In the kitchen, cabinets were flung open, food and dishes everywhere. Then I heard footsteps, someone running toward the back door. I rushed down the hallway, but they escaped before I could see their faces. 2 men, gone in the darkness. My bedroom was also trashed, drawers pulled out, clothes scattered. They must have been searching for the hidden drugs, not realizing I'd already turned them into the police. By the time officers arrived, the men were long gone. I gave as many details as I could, then spent the next few weeks installing new locks, getting a security system, and jumping at every noise. I never saw that man again. Maybe the police caught him, or maybe he simply gave up. But the memory of his obsession with that cheap toolbox still makes me uneasy. Now, every time I see a yard sale, I remember how a bargain can turn into a nightmare. Story 2: The Strange. My name is Marcus, and I work in IT. People assume I have all the latest tech at home, but I actually love vintage stuff, old vinyl records, classic consoles, and yes, VHS tapes. There's a comforting feeling in placing a tape in a VCR, hearing the soft whir as it rewinds. One weekend, my neighborhood held a yard sale event. I wasn't hunting for anything special, but a big box of tapes caught my eye. E.T., The Goonies, Back to the Future, all classics. Then I spotted an unmarked black tape tucked underneath. Its label was peeled off, leaving behind only sticky residue. Curiosity took hold, so I bought the box for $5. That night, I decided to watch the mystery tape last, like a surprise bonus. It started with shaky home video footage, a happy family, mother, father, 2 kids, sitting in a cozy living room, laughing and passing popcorn around. The audio was muffled, but it seemed like just a normal family moment. Except, the living room looked oddly familiar, the furniture arrangement, the wallpaper, even the position of a fireplace. Slowly, I realized they were in my living room, or at least, it was the same layout my house has now. My house was built in the late 80s, and the tape definitely looked decades old. Maybe it was a previous family? But I bought my home from an older couple with no children. On screen, the kids began looking nervously toward the hallway. The parents exchanged worried glances. A heavy tension settled over them. The father whispered something to the mother, and she pulled the kids closer. The camera panned just a little, and I saw strange shadows dancing on the wall, shadows that didn't seem to match any of the family members. Suddenly, the camera dropped, leaving only a view of the floor and the family's feet. The kids sounded like they were crying, their voices blending with weird, whispery noises. Then came a loud thump, like heavy footsteps. Off-screen, without warning, the tape ended in static. Confused and shaken, I ejected the VHS. My living room had the same shape, the same old wallpaper, but the people were strangers. The next day, I forced myself to watch it again in daylight. A calendar on the wall showed a year almost 30 years in the past. The mother and father looked terrified, staring at something just out of view. Then, for half a second, a tall, dark shape, like a shadow that absorbed all light, slipped into the edge of the frame. The tape ended again, leaving me rattled. I questioned a neighbor who had lived on this street for decades. He told me that a younger family once lived in my house, but they left abruptly. He had heard rumors of strange noises, The house sat empty for a few years until another couple bought it and eventually sold it to me. All I know is, these days, I try not to think too hard about what might have happened to that family. Sometimes, on quiet nights, I swear I hear whispering near the fireplace. I keep that old VHS locked in a trunk in my attic, just in case there's more to it than I want to know. Story 3. The Gilded Mirror. My name is Sarah, and I'm a big fan of antiques. There's something special about the craftsmanship and stories behind older items. One Saturday, my neighborhood had a community yard sale, and I wandered over to a table marked Antiques and Vintage Finds. There, leaning against the house, was a tall mirror with a gold, ornate frame carved into patterns of vines and flowers. Though it looked old, it was still stunning. I was already picturing it in my living room, reflecting light near a window. "How much?" I asked the man running the sale, a wiry guy in his late 50s. With intense blue eyes, he didn't quote a price at first, just placed a hand on the mirror and said, "It's been in my family a long time. Are you sure you want it?" I told him I did. He eventually named a price, but then he insisted on delivering it himself. I could have fit it into my own car, yet he seemed oddly determined, although it felt slightly off. I agreed. That afternoon, he came by with his old pickup truck. He carried the mirror inside, set it against the living room wall, and stared at it with a strange intensity. Then he left, but not before taking a good, long look around my home. Over the next few days, I noticed an older blue sedan parked down the street. It always seemed to be facing my house. Initially, I shrugged it off, but when it remained there for hours, I grew uneasy. By day 4, it was parked directly in front. Peeking through the window, I realized the driver was the same man who sold me the mirror. My heart pounded. Why was he watching my house? That evening, I walked outside, determined to speak with him. As soon as I approached his car, he sped off. The next night, the sedan pulled into my driveway. I stared, frozen, as the same man got out and walked slowly toward the front door. Panicking, I grabbed my phone, dialed 911, and locked myself in the kitchen. The man only lingered a short while before the sound of approaching sirens made him retreat. Once the police arrived, I described him and his car, but they could only promise extra patrols. He didn't return after that, but I never quite recovered my peace of mind. The mirror, now in my living room, feels more like it belongs to him than to me. Sometimes I want to sell it, but I hesitate. What if he comes back? Even though he's gone, the memory of his eyes scanning my house lingers. I've stopped browsing for antiques, because I've learned that old treasures can carry burdens heavier than their gold frames. Story 4. The Rocking Chair from Hell. My name is Lauren, and I have a soft spot for vintage furniture. When I saw an old rocking chair at a yard sale, I couldn't resist. The carved vines and leaves decorating its dark wooden frame looked so elegant, despite some scratches. It seemed sturdy. The seller, an older woman, barely met my gaze. $20, she muttered, sounding oddly eager to get rid of it. Back home, I placed the rocking chair near a window in my living room. That first night, I relaxed in it with a book, enjoying the gentle motion. Then, around 11 p.m., I went to bed. An hour later, I heard a faint creak, creak, creak. My heart pounded. It sounded like the rocking chair. But I was alone. I told myself it was just the wood settling. Yet night after night, the same rhythmic creaking woke me. One morning, I noticed the chair had moved a few inches away from the tape mark I placed under one leg. It kept shifting on its own, or so it seemed. Then came the whispers, soft, unintelligible murmurings late at night. One evening, I stayed in the living room to watch the chair. Around 3 a.m., it started rocking violently. Slamming into the wall, I shouted, "Stop it!" Not sure whom I was addressing. The chair froze, as if obeying an unseen order. Horrified, I called my friend Anna, who visited and saw it move on its own. "Nope," she said, shaking her head. "That's not normal." The final straw was another night when I woke to a loud bang. I raced to the living room and found the chair rocking so violently. It nearly flipped over. Overwhelmed by terror, I grabbed my keys and fled the house. The next day, I dragged the chair to the curb with a sign that said simply, "Free." I wanted it out of my life forever. By the afternoon, it was gone. At first, I felt relieved, but my living room felt strangely empty, like the chair had left behind some lingering presence. For weeks, any slight sound made me jump. I learned that not all vintage items are worth the risks they carry. The memory of that rocking chair still sends shivers through me. If these yard sale nightmares sent chills down your spine, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more creepy stories. Tell me in the comments, what would you do if you ended up with one of these haunted finds? And if you have a friend who can't resist a bargain, you might want to share this video with them. Just be sure to give them a warning first. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next nightmare. Stay safe out there, and remember, sometimes a great deal comes with more than you'd ever bargained for.